If you hear sleigh bells after the mall closes, you're already dead. I learned that on my 3rd week as an elf at Santa's village. I'm putting this out there as a warning. This isn't something you can just toss on a job review site. Nobody would get it. They'd think it was a prank, or that I was just mad about getting fired. But I wasn't fired. I ran, and I can never, ever go back. If you're a broke college kid like I was, and you see a help wanted sign at the mall for seasonal elf work, I'm begging you, just keep walking. It doesn't matter what they're paying. It doesn't matter how badly you need cash for tuition or rent. Just turn around and walk away. Some jobs aren't worth it. The money I made is still sitting in a Ziploc bag in my sock drawer. I can't make myself touch it. It feels tainted, dirty. Like if I used it for my electric bill, something awful would crawl right out of the outlets. My name is Leo, and for 3 hellish weeks last winter, I worked as an elf at the Northgate Galeria's Santa's Village. It was supposed to be easy money. Wear a ridiculous costume, smile at kids, and point them to a guy in a red suit. I figured the worst part would be the cheesy music on a loop, or the floors, perpetually sticky with spilled soda. I thought the biggest danger was a screaming toddler having a meltdown over a candy cane. I was wrong. So wrong. The real threat wasn't the kids, it was Santa. The ad I saw was simple enough. Earn holiday cash. Elves needed for Santa's village at Northgate Galleria. Flexible hours, great pay. Must be cheerful and good with children. I could fake cheerful and good with children for $15 an hour. My student loans were breathing down my neck, my dishwashing job had cut my hours, and my diet was a sad rotation of instant noodles and regret. The Northgate Galleria was a monument to 80s consumerism, a sprawling, kind of dated complex of chain stores and food court staples. And every November, right in its centre, they'd build Santa's village. It was a masterpiece of temporary construction, a gaudy, glittering island of fake snow, giant candy canes, and a big plush throne surrounded by plastic Christmas trees. The interview was a joke. The mall's HR manager, a tired woman named Brenda, just asked if I was allergic to synthetic velvet and if I could lift 30 pounds. No, and yes. I was hired. My first day was a blur. They gave me the uniform, an eternally itchy green tunic, red and white striped tights, a floppy hat with a jingle bell, and curly-toed felt shoes with 0 arch support. My new name, they told me, was Jingles. I hated it immediately. There were about a dozen of us seasonal elves. Students, aspiring actors, a few retirees. We were the grunts. We managed the line, took pictures with parents' phones, and handed out cheap lollipops. But then there were the others. The year-rounders. There were 4 of them, and they were different. They didn't just work at Santa's village, they seemed to inhabit it. Their elf costumes were immaculate, perfectly tailored from rich, deep velvet. They didn't just smile, they beamed with this unsettling, constant intensity. Their leader was a woman named Holly. She was the head elf, probably in her late 40s, with sharp, bird-like features and eyes that saw everything. She moved with this silent, unnerving grace, her posture perfect, her face a permanent placid smile that never, ever reached her eyes. It was Holly who pulled me aside after my first training shift. The mall was closing, the tinny Jingle Bell Rock had finally shut off, and security was herding the last shoppers toward the exits. Jingles, she said, her voice soft but firm, a word. She led me behind the painted backdrop of the workshop. The air back there smelled like old sawdust. She handed me a laminated card on a lanyard. On it was a typed list. "The rules for the closing shift," she said, a smile tightening just a bit. "You'll be one of the few evening people. These are very important." I glanced at the list. Seemed like weird but standard retail stuff. Closing shift rules. Santa's Village. Number 1. Ensure all props are returned to their designated places. The reindeer must be in numerical order, left to right. Number 2. The West Corridor break room is for seasonal staff. The year-rounders have their own space. Do not enter their lounge. Number 3. Your costume must be returned to your locker at the end of your shift. Never take it home. Number 4. If Santa offers you a special candy cane from his red sack, politely decline. Always say, "Thank you, Santa, but I'm saving my appetite for the solstice feast." 5. You must be clocked out and exiting the mall by 9:05 p.m. The main gates lock at 9:15 p.m. sharp. Do not be in the mall after the gates are locked. No exceptions. I kinda chuckled at Rule 4. The solstice feast. What's that? Holly's smile didn't move. Just a little tradition we have. Say the words, Jingles. It's important to him. I shrugged. Okay, got it. Straightforward enough. I started to turn, but she put a cool, surprisingly strong hand on my arm. Her grip was like steel. "There's one more," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "It isn't on the card. It's the most important rule of all." She leaned in, her breath smelling faintly of peppermint. "If you are ever here after the mall has closed," she whispered, her eyes locking onto mine, "and you hear sleigh bells, you do not go looking for Santa. You hide. He isn't calling for you. He's calling for the others." And with that, she let go, gave me one last brilliant smile, and glided away into the dimming corridors of the dying mall. The little bell on her own hat was completely silent. I stood there for a second, the card feeling cold in my hand. I told myself it was just hazing, a weird ritual to spook the new guy. I laughed it off, shoved the card in my pocket, and headed home, not realizing I'd just been given a survival guide. That first week was a weird mix of total boredom and a creeping sense of dread. The job itself was what I expected. Stand for hours, back aching, forcing a smile until my face felt like a plastic mask. I said, "Right this way," and Santa's getting his sleigh ready, hundreds of times. I dealt with sticky kids, pushy parents, and teenagers trying to get a savage selfie on the throne. It was retail hell, Christmas edition. But under all that, things were just off. The year-rounder elves, Holly, a grim, silent man named Casper, and 2 women, Baltha and Mel, who moved in unnerving sync, were like they were in a different reality. They never took breaks with us. They'd whisper to each other, sometimes glancing over at the rest of us like we were cattle. Their devotion to Santa was the weirdest part. This Santa's name was Nicholas. He looked the part, you know. Real magnificent white beard, a belly that shook when he laughed, a deep ho-ho-ho that kids loved. Parents thought he was the real deal, but when you watched him for hours every day, you started to see the cracks. It was his eyes. They were a pale, piercing blue. When a kid was on his lap, they'd twinkle with fake warmth. But in between, when he thought no one was looking, that twinkle would just switch off. A cold, assessing stillness would take its place. He'd scan the crowd of parents, his gaze lingering on certain people, usually the ones who looked a little lost, a little lonely, like he was sorting them. One afternoon, I saw it up close. A young single mom was there with her son. She looked exhausted, her clothes a little worn. Nicholas was great with her kid, but his real focus was on her. He spoke to her in this low, soothing voice, telling her what a great job she was doing, how the Christmas spirit was strongest in people who struggle. He held her hand, just a second too long. "You have a powerful light in you," he murmured. "It's a shame the world tries so hard to dim it." She walked away, with tears in her eyes, clutching some pamphlet he'd slipped her. I never saw her or her son at the mall again. The rules Holly gave me started to feel less quirky and more sinister. The props had to be perfect. One night, I accidentally put Blitzen where Donna was supposed to go. Caspar appeared out of thin air, his face like a thundercloud. He didn't say a word. He just pointed at the reindeer, then at me, then back at the reindeer. I fixed it fast, my hands shaking under his stare. He watched me the whole time, then just nodded and melted back into the shadows. The candy cane rule came up on my third closing shift. It was 8:50 p.m. The last family was gone. I was sweeping up fake snow when Nicholas called me over.
"Jingles, my boy,"
he boomed into the quiet.
"A fine job tonight. A very fine job."
He reached into the big red sack next to his throne. It was supposed to be full of toys, but I knew it was mostly just stuffing. He pulled out a single candy cane. It was different from the ones we gave the kids. Thicker, pure white with no red stripe, and twisted into a weird spiral.
"A special treat,"
he said, his blue eyes locking on mine.
"For a special elf. You have a good spirit, Leo."
He used my real name. My blood went cold. We were only supposed to use elf names in the village. Hearing my name in his mouth felt wrong. My mind raced. Politely decline, say, "Thank you, Santa, but I'm saving my appetite for the solstice feast." My heart was hammering. It felt ridiculous, like I was in some stupid play. But the look in Nicholas's eyes, and the way Holly and the other year-rounders had all stopped to watch me, made it feel deadly serious. "Ugh," I stammered, my throat totally dry. "Thank you, Santa, but I'm saving my appetite for the solstice feast." The words felt dumb. For a second, nothing happened. Nicholas's smile stayed put, but it looked frozen. The warmth in his eyes just vanished, leaving that cold, empty stare. It was like a mask had dropped. He saw that I knew something. That I wasn't just another clueless seasonal worker.
"Of course,"
he said, his voice a little flatter. He slowly pulled the candy cane back and dropped it into the sack.
"The feast is for the truly dedicated. We'll see if you're still with us by then."
The moment was broken. The others went back to their tasks. But I knew I'd passed some kind of test. And in passing, I had marked myself. I wasn't just oblivious anymore. I knew one of the secret handshakes. And in a group like this, that felt more dangerous than knowing nothing at all. I basically ran to the locker room, my hands shaking as I tore off the costume. I checked my phone. 9:03 p.m. Rule number 5 was screaming in my head. Clock out and exiting the mall by 9:05 p.m. I sprinted to the time clock, jammed my card in, and joined the trickle of other mall employees heading for the main entrance. The rolling security gate was already halfway down. I ducked under it and burst into the cold night at 9:06 p.m. I didn't stop running until I was in my car. That night, I dreamed of pure white candy canes and the sound of distant sleigh bells. The next 2 weeks were an exercise in paranoia. Every smile from a year-rounder felt like a threat. I became obsessed with the rules, following them like my life depended on it. I double-checked the reindeer every single night. I gave the year-rounders lounge a wide berth, and my entire shift became a countdown to 9:05 p.m. I tried to talk to one of the other seasonal elves, an art student named Clara. "Hey, has Holly given you a weird list of rules?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Clara, or Pixie, just laughed. "The one about the reindeer? Yeah, Holly's a little much, right? Guess she's a perfectionist." "What about the solstice feast, or being out by 9:05? She shrugged. "Never heard of a feast. And the 9:05 thing is weird, but I figure they just want us part-timers gone so the real staff can deep clean or something. Don't worry about it, Jingles. It's just a weird Christmas job." Her brushing it off just made me feel more alone. Was I going crazy? Was the stress of finals and being broke just making me see things? But then I'd see something else. I'd see Casper leading a few mall janitors, people who had no reason to take orders from an elf, into the year-rounders lounge. They'd come out an hour later, looking dazed. I'd see Mel talking quietly to a security guard in the camera room, pointing at a monitor, her smile never dropping. This wasn't just a few weird elves. It felt like the whole mall was in on it. Nicholas pretty much ignored me after the candy cane incident. He was too busy recruiting. I watched him work his magic on the vulnerable people in the crowd, the lonely ones. He was a predator, and his hunting ground was a velvet throne. He offered them a place to belong, a family. All they had to do was give him everything. My breaking point came during my last week. It was a slow Tuesday night. Clara was working the closing shift with me, which was rare. Around 8:30, she complained about a headache. "Ugh, I think it's the Frosty the Snowman loop," she groaned. "I'm going to see if the main office has aspirin. Our break room is always out." She started walking toward the corridor with the admin offices and the year-rounders lounge. "Clara, wait," I hissed. "Don't go down there. I think I have some ibuprofen." "Don't be silly, Leo," she said, waving me off. "I'll be right back." "What's the big deal?" She vanished around the corner. I stood there, frozen with dread. 5 minutes passed. 10. The mall's closing announcement started. 8:55 p.m. Still no Clara. I started to panic. My shift was ending, and Rule 5 was pounding in my head. But I couldn't just leave her. Against my better judgment, I crept down the forbidden hallway. It was darker here. I passed the empty mall management office. Further down, I saw a door with a simple brass plaque. North Pole Annex. The Year-Rounders Lounge. The door was slightly ajar. My heart was a jackhammer. I could hear a low, rhythmic chanting from inside. It was a soft, humming sound, and it was deeply unsettling. I pushed the door open just a tiny bit more and peered inside. It wasn't a lounge. It was some kind of shrine. The walls were painted deep blue. In the center of the room, on a circular rug, stood Clara. Her eyes were closed, her face slack and peaceful. Holly, Caspar, Mel and Balthus stood in a circle around her chanting, and sitting in a high-backed chair, watching with those cold, empty eyes, was Nicholas. He wasn't in his Santa suit. He was wearing a simple, expensive-looking white robe. He held one of those white, spiral candy canes like a scepter. They weren't hurting her. They were initiating her. I saw the moment her will just broke. Her expression slackened, becoming completely blank. Her eyes fluttered open, but they were empty. The bubbly artist I knew was gone. She was a doll. Nicholas smiled, a real triumphant smile. He saw me. Our eyes met through the crack in the door. He didn't look surprised or angry. He looked pleased. He gave me a slow, deliberate nod, as if to say, "See? This is what it means to belong. You could have this." I didn't wait. I turned and ran. I didn't care about the rules. Didn't care about clocking out. I just ran. I sprinted through the empty mall, my stupid felt shoes slapping on the tile. I burst through an emergency exit, setting off an alarm, and fumbled with the panic bar on a final steel door, throwing myself into the parking lot, gasping the cold night air. I never went back. I left the elf costume in the locker. I left my last paycheck. I blocked Clara's number, but she never called. I knew the girl I knew was gone. Only Pixie was left. I should have left it at that, but I couldn't. I had to know. What were they doing? What was the solstice feast? And what was the deal with that final rule, the one about the sleigh bells? That curiosity nearly got me killed. A few days later, I did something incredibly stupid. I went back. I couldn't shake the image of Clara's empty eyes or Nicholas's triumphant nod. I fell down internet rabbit holes about cults and psychological manipulation. The patterns were all there: isolation, an in-group, a charismatic leader. Nicholas wasn't just a mall Santa. He was a predator, and his village was the perfect trap. I told myself I needed proof, something to take to the police, though I had no idea what they could do. What's the crime? Being creepy Christmas weirdos? My plan was idiotic. I knew the mall's layout, and I knew a service door by the food court dumpsters had a faulty lock. It was my way in. I waited until the night of the winter solstice. The solstice feast. It felt too important to be a coincidence. Dressed in black, I watched from my car as the mall closed and the last employees scurried away. Around 11 p.m, I made my move. The service door clicked open. I slipped inside. The silence was the first thing that hit me. A mall is never truly silent, but this was a dead, tomb-like quiet. I crept through the food court, past the dark storefronts of Superdrug and Foot Locker. As I got closer to the centre of the mall, I heard it. A low humming. The same chanting from the lounge. It was coming from Santa's village, but it was louder this time. More voices. I crouched behind a coffee stand and peered over the counter. The village wasn't lit by its festive bulbs, but by hundreds of white candles. The cutesy props were gone. In the centre of the space, a long banquet table had been set up. Around it sat the year-rounders, and with them, 20 other people. I recognised some: mall security guards, janitors, and a few of the lost-looking people Nicholas had targeted. They all wore simple white robes. At the head of the table, on his throne, sat Nicholas. This was their solstice feast. A ritual. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely use my phone. I needed a picture. I held it up, trying to zoom in on Nicholas, and then I heard it. A soft, clear, impossibly close sound. Sleigh bells. The final rule slammed into my brain. If you are ever here after the mall has closed and you hear sleigh bells, do not go looking for Santa. Hide. The chanting stopped. Instantly. Every person at the table went stiff. The heads all turned in unison, not towards me, but toward the main entrance of the mall. Nicholas rose from his throne. He wasn't a jovial Santa or a cult leader now. He was something else. His face was severe. His eyes burned.
"He comes!"
Nicholas breathed, his voice carrying across the silent space.
"The giver of gifts, the taker of the unworthy. He comes to cull the flock."
He looked at his followers.
"You know the rules. You know your purpose. The grounds must be cleansed."
My blood turned to ice. The rules weren't just for me, they were for them. The sleigh bells weren't a warning for me to hide from Santa. They were a signal, a call to hunt, and I was the prey. Holly stood up, her face ecstatic. Let us rejoice. The others rose, their faces lit with fanatical fervour. They began to spread out, fanning away from the village and into the shadows. They were hunting. For me. I ducked down, frozen. I heard their soft shoes padding on the tile. Oh, Jingles. It was Holly's voice, sickly sweet. We know you're here. The giver knows. Casper's voice was a low growl from another direction. The harvest is ready. I was trapped. I scrambled backwards, knocking over a stack of metal trays with a deafening clatter. Every head snapped in my direction. 25 pairs of eyes locked onto my hiding spot. Nicholas smiled, a horrible, predatory grin. There you are, he said. The lost lamb. Run. And they came for me. A silent, swift tide of white-robed fanatics. I finally found my feet and ran. The chase was a nightmare. I fled down the main concourse, the sound of their padding feet a constant rhythm behind me. They were fast. I dodged into a darkened department store, a maze of clothing racks. I dove under a table of sweaters, my breath burning in my lungs. I could hear them entering the store, whispering, searching methodically. The giver sees all, Mel's voice sang out. He sees your fear. I had to move. I crawled on my belly toward the back of the store. A pair of white-robed legs appeared at the end of the aisle. I froze. It was one of the security guards. Then I saw her. Clara. Pixie. Standing at the other end of the aisle. Her face was blank, but she was looking right at me. She lifted a single, trembling finger and pointed at my hiding spot. He's here, she said, her voice a monotone. The guard's head snapped down. Our eyes met. He smiled and started walking toward me. I scrambled out and ran again, pushing through racks of clothes, sending mannequins crashing down. I burst back into the main concourse, heading for the escalators. Maybe I could hide on the second floor. As I reached the bottom, I saw him. Nicholas, standing at the top, waiting. He hadn't run. He just knew.
It's over, Leo,
he called down.
Join us. It's so much easier than fighting.
I was trapped. I sprinted past the escalators toward the mall's movie theatre. I threw my shoulder against an employees-only door and stumbled into a narrow hallway. I ran, fumbling for my phone's flashlight, hearing their footsteps echoing behind me. I burst into the theatre complex, a vast cavern of silence. I ran into one of the actual theatres, the doors swinging shut, plunging me into near-total blackness. I tripped on the stairs and tumbled down, landing in a heap on the sticky floor. I lay there, trying not to breathe. I could hear them fanning out in the lobby. Check every theatre, Holly commanded. The doors to my theatre creaked open. A sliver of light cut through the dark, followed by 3 white-robed figures. They started moving down the aisles, slow and deliberate. This was it. I was going to die here. And then I heard it again, closer. So close it felt like it was right outside the walls. Jingle, 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 jingle. The sleigh bells. The 3 figures in the theatre stopped. They turned and looked toward the screen, their faces filled with a kind of ecstatic terror. The bells stopped directly outside. A slow, heavy thump hit the fire exit door. And another thump, thump. One of the figures whimpered. They weren't hunting me anymore. They were waiting. He wasn't coming for me now. He was coming for the others. I finally understood. The sleigh bells were a call to the hunters to feed him. The thing ringing them didn't care where the meal came from. The thumping stopped. There was a scrape of metal, and the fire exit door screeched open. A shape filled the doorway, silhouetted against the dim red light. It was huge, far too big to be a man. It was stooped, with something heavy on its back. It took a step inside, and the floorboards groaned. It wasn't Nicholas. It wasn't Santa. It was something ancient and terrible, wearing the skin of a holiday myth. The three cultists fell to their knees. "We are yours, giver," they chanted. "We have found an offering." The massive shape turned its head, its gaze sweeping the room. It let out a low, guttural sound, a horrible parody of a ho ho ho. It started down the aisle, not toward me, but toward them. It was dragging a massive tattered burlap sack. This was my chance. While it was occupied, I crawled away. I heard one of the cultists start to scream, a sound that was cut off with a wet, crunching noise. I didn't look back. I burst out of the theatre and ran for my life, not stopping until I was outside in the cold night air, the screams from the mall fading behind me. I drove for an hour before I had to pull over, shaking too hard to hold the wheel. I don't know what that thing was. The giver. I only know it was real. Nicholas and his followers weren't just a cult. They were serving something tangible. Something they fed. The rules. The hunt. It was all a ritual to appease a creature that wears Santa's face as a mask. I never went back to that town. I dropped out for the semester, packed a bag, and just drove. I ended up 1,000 miles away. Sometimes, I look up the Northgate Galleria online. It's still open, and every November, they still set up Santa's village. I imagine Nicholas is still there, his cold eyes scanning the crowds. I imagine Holly and the others are still there, with their empty smiles. I wonder how many other lost lambs they've found. So I'm telling you this as a warning. They're still out there, hiding in the most innocent-looking place you can imagine. If you're ever in a mall late at night during the holidays, and you hear the faint sound of sleigh bells after the doors are locked, don't be curious. Run, hide, and pray that whatever is coming isn't coming for you. Hi everyone, thanks for listening. And a massive shout out to my members. Member Mark Mathern, 7322. I love you, you have taste. You are keeping the cursed lights on in this haunted little channel. If you enjoyed the chaos, hit subscribe, like, and maybe join the membership so you can say, I was here before she got weirdly famous. Random fun fact, I made £2.71 on YouTube today. I am now rich beyond measure. Don't talk to me, I'm a celebrity. Good night.